Hello and welcome everybody to day one of ESB Network's Dingle Project webinar series. This is the first of our 4 webinars that will take place over the next 4 days through to Friday. My name is Kevin Gleeson and I am the Innovation Projects and Collaboration Manager at ESB Networks and will be facilitating today. The theme of today's webinar is Towards a Low Carbon Society, and we'll hear about ESB Network's Dingle project, some emerging trends around consumer values when considering low carbon technology, and the supports available to citizens, businesses, and communities to support low carbon transformation. We encourage attendees to ask questions and would request that you post these in the chat box. At the end of the presentations, we will try to address as many questions as possible within the timeframe available. Each of the webinars this week will be recorded and the links will be posted on ESB Network's website in due course. First off, I'd like to introduce Claire Duffy, who is the manager of ESB Network's Development and Electrification business line, which is responsible for innovation in ESB Networks. I'd like to welcome Claire to say a few words and introduce the webinar series. Welcome, Claire.
Fiadid agus falsiróta lig seo aniu lá an bhfuil storm bara chur tresna na tíre agus súlagan go mé aham daine slán sláilte aniu. So I just want to say a very warm welcome to all of you joining us on our series today. The first of a series of webinars, as Kevin said, this week. Really a chance for our Dingle electrification project team to share the results and the learnings that they have observed from this, which is one of our key, flagship innovation projects in ESB Networks, and to open up the discussion with a number of key partners and thought leaders throughout the week to share and discuss the ideas and the observations and learnings that we've noted in the Dingle project. I suppose for us today, we're getting a very good overview, both an overview of the Dingle project itself, and I know Fergal Egan, the Dingle project manager, will step us through that. But also we wanted to help set the scene by inviting Catherine O'Brien and Ruth Buggy to join us, who will be talking around the whole areas of policies and trends, and then what we can be doing to encourage individuals and businesses on this move and this journey towards this low carbon transition. And a special thanks to Catherine, who has stepped in at quite short notice for us, as unfortunately Enda Gallagher was unable to join us with a prior commitment. So thanks very much for that. So really today is just for me to sort of say, encourage everyone to engage with the sessions today and for the rest of the week. There's lots of opportunities to ask questions. We've set aside a good chunk of time today, and so hopefully it'll be in an hour and a half where we can forget about Storm Bara, we can forget about the COVID, and we can take some time out of our work day to sort of reflect on some of the new and exciting learnings that are coming through from Dingle, and seeing perhaps where we're going and how we're going to help get us through to that future low carbon energy system. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Claire, for your words of introduction and best wishes today for the webinar as well. Our first presenter today is Fergal Egan, who is the manager of the Dingle project since March 2020. Fergal joined ESB in 1986 and has led a variety of roles across ESB. Most recently, prior to joining ESB Networks in June 2019, Fergal established ESB's innovation hub, Excite, at Dogpatch Labs in Dublin City Centre. Fergal's presentation today will explain what the Dingle project is all about and what lies ahead for the remainder of the week. Welcome, Fergal, over to you.
Thank you, Kevin, and good afternoon, everybody who's joined today's webinar. Just waiting on my slides to pop up there on the screen. Okay, so today again is we're looking at Towards a Low Carbon Society is the theme of today. The other themes there for the rest of the week, in particular, Friday is looking at networks resilience. Obviously, it's very apt in the minds of people today as we might be in the middle of Storm Bara, or certainly listening to updates on the news and that throughout the day. So if you could move to the next slide, please. So our webinar today will focus on 3 areas. I'll provide an overview of the Dingle project, what we hope to achieve, Some of the people that we've worked with, I talked about some of those, and some of the learnings that are emerging. And I suppose, of course, if you want to find out the detail under each of these learnings, you'll need to attend the relevant webinars on either Wednesday or Thursday this week, or maybe watch the videos at a later stage. We'll be recording the webinars, and in due course, the videos will be made available through the ESB Networks website. Now, as Claire mentioned, unfortunately, Enda Gallagher from the Department of Communications, Climate Action and the Environment, he was due to speak to us today about the role of the citizen and communities in the wider transformation of society to low carbon energy. But unfortunately, he was unable to attend today due to unforeseen circumstances. But we're delighted that Catherine O'Brien from Accenture has stepped in, and Catherine is the energy transition lead at Accenture, and she's lots of views and thoughts from research that Accenture has done on emerging consumer value trends when it comes to purchasing, and in particular, with regard to low carbon transformation and purchases in that space. So Catherine will be followed then from Ruth Buggy from the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland. And Ruth has lots of thoughts and ideas for us in terms of the supports that are available to individuals, businesses and citizens to enable this wider transition to low carbon. So next slide, please. So for those that haven't been on any of the Dingle project webinars in the past, I'll just give you a quick overview of what the project is about. And I suppose Ireland published its climate action plan in 2019, and this was refreshed again this year in 2021. And some of the key targets in the plan include achieving nearly 1 million electric vehicles on Ireland's roads and 600,000 premises being equipped with electrified heating by 2030. And I suppose even before the plan was published, ESB Networks had designed its Dingle project to help it understand the potential impact of low carbon or clean energy enabling technologies such as solar PV, residential batteries, air source heat pumps and electric vehicle charging on the local electricity network. And these technologies are things which will become much more commonplace in our homes and businesses over the coming years. So the project was set up with 4 distinct objectives. And I suppose with more and more people relying on the electricity network to heat their homes and power their cars, the Dingle project has been exploring a number of new technologies on the overhead network on the peninsula in Dingle to minimise the instances of and duration of some types of faults. The project also intended trialling one form of peer-to-peer energy services to determine the impacts, if any, that might arise on the local electricity network, and to help us better understand the infrastructure that will be required to support peer-to-peer. Now, unfortunately, due to challenges in finding a partner to work with us on this aspect of the project, we decided to remove it from scope, but we have produced a report on the work done and the learnings from our engagement across the industry in this regard, and that's published on the ESB Networks website. And I suppose with all of those technologies, which are expected to connect to the low voltage network over the coming years, ESB Networks was very, very interested in better understanding the potential to control these technologies, to minimise their impact on the network, and also to determine the impact and the potential of these technologies to offer a level of flexibility to us as network operator, so as, for example, to accommodate additional electrified heating and transport loads without the need to carry out reinforcements of the network. So that's what the whole area of flexibility is about. And I suppose to get the maximum benefit from the project's technical trials, ESB Networks recognised the need to activate participation by citizens across the community so we could better understand how their behaviours might affect the use of these technologies and thereby the impact on the network itself. So we set up a programme to engage the community on low carbon transformation and also work closely with MARI to perform research and to help us understand the effectiveness of the initiatives in driving change and the diffusion of behaviours across society. If you could go on to the next slide, please. So just a quick look at the rest of the week ahead. And I suppose in the next 10 minutes or so, I won't have time to get into the detail of the work done under any of these objectives, but I just want to assure you that the sessions for the rest of the week will provide a much deeper dive in each. So tomorrow, Wednesday, Kieran Geaney, the ICT lead for the project, he will explain the work carried out under our EV trial and flexibility trial and some of the interesting learnings from each. And there'll also be a discussion with one of the participants on the EV trial, and he'll share his own experiences from that trial. Thursday, we'll focus on the work undertaken to engage and empower citizens and the wider community to progress along their own low carbon transformation journeys. So Claire McElligott, who's the community engagement manager for the project, will share her experiences and also chat to 2 of the project ambassadors who will share their own thoughts. The Thursday session will also provide an opportunity for Evan Boyle of the Marine and Renewable Energy Institute to share thoughts on and learnings from the social research which he led and carried out across the peninsula throughout the project. So that'll be very interesting to get his perspective. And then Friday will be very interesting, particularly in terms of what we're experiencing around us today. So Friday provides the opportunity to discuss the innovative work that's been carried out to enhance the resilience of the local network. So we'll have Cheryl Carmody, who was the Networks Assets lead on the project. She'll be joined by Mary O'Mahony, who's ESB Networks Continuity Improvement Manager. And they will explain the programme of work ahead over the coming years to roll out some of these types of technologies at a wider scale. And follow on from that discussion, we'll also have two very interesting discussions to round off the webinar series. So Ellen Diskin, who's manager of ESB Networks National Networks Local Connections Programme, will speak a little bit about that programme and how it will build upon some of the learnings of the Dingle project. And then our final speaker will be Deirdre Devilish of the Dingle Innovation and Creativity Hub. And Deirdre will explain some of the other low carbon transformation initiatives happening across the Dingle Peninsula and some of the future plans for the area. So next slide, please. So across ESB Networks, we have three innovation pillars: the future customer, climate action, and network resilience. Now, these pillars provide direction for innovation projects across the business. The Dingle project straddles all three of these pillars. So first of all, working with individual citizens and the community across the Dingle project, we have, through our demonstration and engagement programs, sowed the seeds and enabled locally driven initiatives to develop, which will over time see more people transition from passive consumers of electricity into active energy citizens. Now, our EV trials and flexibility trial, together with the insights into how people use low carbon technologies in their daily lives, are helping us to better understand the challenges of accommodating additional electrified heat and transport loads. And our trials of technologies on the physical network itself and the associated analysis of this data is helping us to better understand the role that some of these technologies can have in further enhancing the reliability of the network for all our customers. So next slide, please. So we spent nearly 3 years working closely with individual citizens and community groups right across the peninsula to help us better understand the impact on the local network of low carbon or clean energy enabling technologies behind the meter in our customers' homes. So we've created a number of what we call the fully electrified homes of the future, equipping them with the full range of technologies from solar PV and batteries to air source heat pumps and electric vehicles. And we've also equipped other homes to a lesser degree with combinations of some of these technologies. Now, we could have carried out an exercise in a laboratory setting to determine the interaction of these devices and their impact on the local network, but we didn't think that would be enough to really understand their impact. But by working closely with the participants on our trials, we've been able to better understand how these technologies are used in their day-to-day lives and the impact of this on the local network. Now, these behaviours and habits could only have been determined and understood through real on-the-ground demonstrations and trials involving really engaged people. And we had this in abundance throughout the Dingle project. Now, we also experienced at firsthand some of the technical communication challenges that exist when public telecommunications infrastructure, local broadband schemes, and Wi-Fi networks in and around the home are being used to communicate with multiple devices and technologies. Again, this is not something that would have been very visible within a laboratory trial setting. So Kieran will speak a little bit about some of those challenges and learnings at Wednesday's webinar. Now, when we kicked off the project, we had hoped to establish clusters of technologies on the network so that we could really understand how increased penetration of things like heat pumps or EV load might impact on the network. Now, at the same time, we wanted to select people from our trials that would be very good advocates for what we're trying to achieve within the project and who, through their good example and efforts, might encourage others in their communities to take steps along their own low carbon transformation journeys. Now, as it turned out, we didn't succeed in establishing these clusters, but we definitely recruited people onto our trials who have done a huge amount to share what low carbon energy transformation has meant for them. So we selected 5 individuals representative of typical citizens in the area to act as ambassadors and advocates for all we're trying to do. And we equipped their homes with the full suite of clean energy enabling technologies, and we're working closely with them to understand what transitioning to an active energy citizen really means for them. Now, we also provided electric vehicles and smart EV chargers to 10 additional people, and we have equipped an additional 20 properties with solar panels. So you'll get to hear some of these experiences as the week progresses. So next slide, please. So we spent nearly 3 years engaging the community, encouraging participation in our trials, procuring technology and devices, and installing and testing them at our trial participants' homes and businesses. So this image shows all of the technologies that have been installed for our 5 Dingle ambassadors. For those trial participants only taking part in our EV trial and our PV trials, they received only those technologies necessary to enable them to participate fully in those trials. So our test bed is now complete, And to date, we've installed 25 solar PV systems, with 5 air source heat pumps. We carried out deep retrofits of 2 residential properties and 1 restaurant and bar premises. We installed 5 residential batteries. We leased 17 electric vehicles for a year, and we provided 15 of these with smart EV chargers to 15 of our trial participants, with the other 2 being made available to other citizens on the peninsula on a managed basis so that they could experience electrified motoring. We also installed home energy monitoring equipment at all 35 trial sites across the peninsula. And in October of this year, we swapped out 5 of those smart EV chargers and replaced them with 5 residential scale vehicle to grid chargers, but they were the first ones installed in Ireland. We rolled out a mobile app for all our trial participants, which provides them next to real-time information on their energy footprint. And they're able to see what's happening in their premises, helping them to make small changes to their energy usage behaviours if they want. We've also successfully integrated all of these technologies and data with a back-end system, which is capable of optimizing the operation of these technologies in the economic interest of the customer, as well as being capable of controlling their operation to provide flexibility support to the local network. So next slide, please. So today, the Dingle ambassadors, EV ambassadors, and solar PV champions are doing a great job sharing their experiences and telling their stories across the community and beyond. For anybody interested, some of these experiences of the 5 Dingle ambassadors are available to look at on YouTube, the Dingle 2030 website, and other social media sites. We think that in Dingle, we've achieved a really good balance between an engagement strategy that on the one hand switches citizens' mindsets to one of low carbon energy transformation, and also the technical infrastructure and platforms that can enable this in the best interest of the electricity network. But it didn't just happen by chance. So on Thursday, Claire will talk about the efforts to engage the community as a whole, from primary and secondary school initiatives, leveraging local media, sponsorship of multiple community events, and participation in community-wide steering committees. The message of what the Dingle project and wider low-carbon transformation is about was shared with all demographics across the peninsula. And I suppose by getting the community switched on to what our project was about and working closely with us, we are better able to understand how their evolving behaviours and energy footprint impacts the local network. After all, there's little point in developing the best IT systems and platforms to manage and control energy usage if the users of the electricity network underpinning that, the local citizens, are not effectively engaged to achieve those same objectives. So next slide, please. So on Friday, as I mentioned, Cheryl and Mary will talk us through some of the innovations on the overhead electricity network that could make it more resilient and enhance its reliability in the eyes of all the customers. And with more people likely to be more dependent on the electricity network in the future, needing it to heat their homes and power their cars, we've been exploring how some new technologies and the analysis of data from these devices might enable us to reduce the occurrence of certain types of faults, or in those instances where faults have occurred, help us speed up their restoration and minimise supply interruptions. You'll also hear how innovations and improvements to existing or traditional devices on the network have also improved the overall service to all connected customers on the network in Dingle. So next slide, please. And I suppose without giving too much away ahead of Wednesdays and Thursdays webinars, some of the observations, learnings and insights from our trials are as follows. So firstly, programs like the Dingle Ambassadors program really do work. So what we have seen through the engaged research carried out by MARI and from our own initiatives with the Dingle Ambassadors and other participants on the trials is that while individual citizens hear what the so-called experts say, they really listen to the experience of the people that they know, whether that's family, friends, or people in the local community. Our ambassadors are sharing their experience every day. People are talking to them in the local supermarket, on the street, calling up to their houses and knocking on their doors to ask them questions about technology or the improvements that it has brought into their day-to-day lives. So they're really doing an effective job in that regard. Now, but these ambassadors cannot be expected to shoulder all of this effort to switch other people onto low carbon on their own. So there's definitely a role within communities for structured support at that community level, whether it's an engagement manager, something like Claire has been fulfilling over the last 3 years, or something similar, to help people along that path and point them to where they can get the answers to help them make the informed decisions that are best for them. So we've got lots and lots of learnings in that space, and Evan will be talking through some of these on Thursday. I suppose in the second area then, and I suppose when you look at our EV trial, the core purpose of our EV trial was for us to understand the impact of electric vehicle charging load on the network. Now, however, as part of the trial, we had access to lots and lots of data related to the individual journeys undertaken by trial participants. So what we have seen from the analysis of this journey data is that today's electric vehicles are a very, very good fit for people living in rural communities. So using home charging, the EV drivers regularly travel the 50 to 60 kilometres each way to the large county towns of Tralee and Killarney, or the 150 kilometres each way distance to the cities of Limerick and Cork. So the range in today's EVs easily accommodates that. Now, we've also seen people make the return journey of about 700 kilometres to Dublin in a single day, typically recharging on the return leg at one of the motorway charging stations. And I suppose from chatting to some of the EV ambassadors, the concern that they might have had about recharging on the public network is greatly reduced after they've done it once. So our analysis of journey data shows that only a small percentage of them would require charging beyond the home charger anyway. So lots and lots of good learnings there about the fit of electric vehicles that are on the market today for people that are living in rural communities. And I suppose the third area I just wanted to highlight is, we have successfully implemented a system that can control and optimize a range of different low carbon technologies from different manufacturers and suppliers situated and installed behind the meter in the customer home. So we've shown that the technologies can be controlled to follow market price indicators, and this has enabled us to schedule when they switch on and off. So our trials have demonstrated that low carbon technologies in our customers' homes can be scheduled so as to minimize their impact on the network, or at times provide support to the local network operator. So throughout the trials and tests undertaken, the Dingle project has shown that it is technically possible for individual active energy citizens to provide flexibility support to the local network. And I suppose to find out more about each of these learnings and a lot more, make sure you join the webinar sessions during the remainder of this week. So next slide, please. So the technical trials at customers' homes will be concluded at the end of January. At that stage, the lease on the electric vehicles is up and the cars will be returned to the local provider at that stage. I'm sure the trial participants involved in the EV trial will be delighted with that. And we will then work with all the people involved with us to ensure that they're happy to retain the technologies which have been installed at their premises, or if not, we'll remove where requested. Now, throughout the trial and throughout the project as a whole, we've collected a lot of data. In the first quarter of 2022, we will be developing a solution so that interested parties can access this data in an anonymized format, of course, and use it for their own analysis and research purpose. So once our technical trials have concluded, we'll be working to finalise our project reports and share the learnings and observations. So I'd expect that we'll have a further number of webinars early in Q2 2022 or thereabouts. So keep an eye on the ESB Networks website and our social media feeds for further information in that regard. So while ESB Networks' Dingle project will conclude in early next year, it'll leave behind a platform both in terms of low carbon technology, which has been installed on the peninsula, and an engaged community, which could be used by others to carry out further technical trials and behavioural and social research. So Deirdre Devilish, who heads up the Dingle Innovation and Creativity Hub, will be speaking on Friday about the Cork Gwina 2030 initiative, and she may have her own views on the potential for further low carbon energy research right across the Dingle Peninsula. So that's really all I have to share with you at the moment, but I look forward to speaking to you all further during the Q&A. So get your questions into the chat, and thank you very much for listening. So now back to you, Kevin.
Thank you, Fergal, for providing that overview of the Dingle project and what lies ahead this week to share both the learnings from the project in collaboration with our ambassadors and partners on some of those insights. Now, I'm delighted to welcome our second speaker today, Catherine O'Brien. Catherine is the Energy Transition Lead at Accenture Ireland and a Director in Accenture's Strategy and Consulting practice, where she has led a variety of energy transition and sustainability engagements in Ireland, the UK, and globally. Catherine is a chartered engineer by background, and prior to joining Accenture, she held a variety of roles across ESB, including strategy and innovation, energy services, power trading, and wind development. She holds an executive MBA from UCD Smurfit, a master's in engineering degree in sustainable energy from UCC, and has completed executive education in the US at Yale University. Catherine has published a variety of thought leadership on energy transition topics, including renewable electricity and gas and integrated energy systems. With that, today, Catherine will share her thoughts on emerging consumer values in the whole area of low carbon transition. Welcome, Catherine, and over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Kevin, and thanks ESB for the opportunity to join the conversation today. I'm really delighted to have the opportunity to be here. Before I talk about our research in detail, I'd really like to first commend ESB, the Dingle community, and the ambassadors and all the other partners that are involved in really what is a super example of how we can drive climate action and innovation through community engagement. I personally come from a small community in Clare, and I'd absolutely love to see more Dingle projects right across the country in our towns and in our villages. So I think everyone involved in Dingle can be really, really proud of what you've achieved and the part that you're playing in terms of your community and in terms of Ireland's energy transition. So we know that nothing short of a revolution is going to be required in terms of reaching our climate action targets for 2030 and when we look beyond that to 2050. And that's particularly so in terms of the customer and the demand side. So understanding the customer, their needs and wants, and their values is more critical than ever. And as we think about how we're going to engage the hearts and the minds of customers in the energy transition at a scale and a pace like we've never seen before. So I'm delighted to have the opportunity today to share some insights from our 16th and our latest Accenture Global Consumer Pulse Survey. And it's interesting because it seeks to understand the motivations that matter for today's consumer or customer, and particularly as we emerge from the pandemic. So as I talk about the insights and across the different value areas, I'll interpret them in the context of the consumer engagement in the energy transition itself. Next slide, please. So we've seen that the pandemic has really compelled consumers en masse to shift their expectations more rapidly and completely than we've seen at any other time in history. So people have looked inward, elevating concepts of relationships and responsibility, and ultimately reevaluated their priorities. Now, many of them are applying those new mindsets to what, where, and how they buy. So through their purchase choices and behaviours, they're purposely seeking to influence their communities, the environment, and to confirm how they see themselves in the world. So our recent survey and research of more than 25,000 consumers across 22 countries actually bears that out. And we saw that a full 50% of consumers say that the pandemic has really caused them to rethink their personal purpose and to really reevaluate what's important to them in life. We saw that 42% say that the pandemic made them realise they need to focus more on others than on themselves. So those consumers, we call them the reimagined. They're changing their buying habits accordingly across all of the 14 industries that we covered in this analysis. And the data is especially important as we think about the power of community in the context of the energy transition. And it really also does underscore how powerful an opportunity there is to tap into that renewed sense of purpose. So if we move to the next slide, please. So we saw that 50% have reimagined their values and their behaviours. So what about the rest? We saw that just 17% of consumers, we call those the traditional, said that they're unchanged by the pandemic. So the remaining 33% then have mindsets that are still evolving, but we're seeing that many of those are shifting towards reimagined behaviours. And what stands out most about the reimagined is not what makes them different, but what makes them the same or similar. So our survey captured a really wide range of demographic information in terms of age, gender, location, employment, income, life changes, and so forth. And what we discovered was that the reimagined don't actually have discernible demographic distinctions or differences. They are, in fact, a generally similar group. And in fact, although everyone everywhere had different experiences of the pandemic, these consumers have really mainstreamed purchasing considerations that were once peripheral and confined to demographic subsets. So in the recent past, for example, we saw it was younger consumers for the most part who expected a brand's larger purpose to align with their outlook on life. But what is interesting now is we're seeing that a broad group of consumers are now seeing that connection as important. Next slide, please. So what motivates these reimagined customers? Well, we analysed over 80 unique factors across 14 different industries. And what we found was that 5 distinct areas are increasingly driving consumers' purchasing decisions. The 5 factors extend beyond price and quality to include health and safety, service and personal care, ease and convenience, product origin, trust, and reputation. So if you take those as a bundle of 5 consumer motivations, and if we look at the graph on the left, what we see is that for our reimagined customers, this bundle of motivations combined, it's more important than price and quality combined. So for instance, if you can see the first column, it's greater in total than the second column, which combines just price and quality. Again, as a reminder, those reimagined consumers, they represent more than half of consumers, or 83% if we seek to include those that are evolving in that way, so the vast majority. The next two columns show the traditional consumer, which was 17% of those surveyed. And here we see that those bundle of 5 motivations, it's roughly as important as price and quality combined, but not more important. So for the vast majority of consumers, if we can tap into those 5 motivations in the right way, then we can influence how they consume products and services and interact with them. And considering these 5 motivations will be key as we design products and services that seek to engage energy consumers in buying behaviours and other behaviours that support energy transition. Next slide, please. So you've heard about the 5 motivations at a very high level. Now let's take a look at each of them in a little bit more detail if we move to the next slide again. So in terms of health and safety, what we've seen is that consumers are asking, are you keeping me and my neighbours safe? So interestingly, their concern extends beyond themselves and their neighbours, or to their neighbours or communities, and they're asking also, what about your employees? So critically for organisations, are they extending that concern in terms of health and safety and taking action around that? And after more than a year of social distancing, hand washing, masks and so forth, consumers are highly attuned to the health and safety of any experience. And the fact is people have become health and safety obsessed. So the Reimagined have indicated that this priority will not go away after the pandemic, and they want to be confident that every business will strive to be part of a health-orientated ecosystem that can enhance their lives. And we saw that 63% of the Reimagined think it's crucial that companies and brands actively promote healthy practices versus 2% of the traditional. So as we think about energy transition then and engaging consumers, tapping into the health dimensions of switching from, say, solid fuels in the home to electric heating or air quality benefits associated with electric cars in a country where we've over 1,300, I should say, premature deaths every year due to air quality, it's really, really important. And interestingly, I was recently listening to a piece on Matt Cooper where it was being discussed how a consortium of over 200 of the biggest medical journals in the world have come together for the first time, and they've published a joint editorial which describes climate change beyond 1.5 degrees as the greatest threat to global public health of the 21st century. And it talked about how all the health gains of the last 150 years will be wiped out if we continue on the path that we're on today. So to me, it was really, really striking to hear the medical profession now also come out in support of climate action. So I think there's a real opportunity there to show people how they can lead healthier lives and benefit from air quality and other environmental outcomes through embracing and participating in the energy transition. I also mentioned safety, and the data tells us that that's also vital. And as we ask consumers and citizens to engage with new technology and experiences, they have to feel that those devices in their homes and communities are safe to interact with. We move to the next area in the next slide, then in terms of service and personal care. Consumers are asking, do you remember me? Are you making my experience with your brand as personal as it can be? Are you there for me when I need you? So what we saw is that 72% of the Reimagined expect companies that they're doing business with to understand how their needs and objectives have changed during this time of disruption and to address those needs. And that's versus 27% of the traditional. Along with increased online shopping, consumers expect more interaction with customer service, and they'd like to see faster response times and more respect for and attention for their individual needs and concerns. So again, as we think about the energy transition, if we expect consumers to engage, particularly with new technologies in the home and the community, then having the right level of service and personal care and support is a critical factor that consumers value as they make those buyer decisions. So for instance, if I believe that once I put in an EV charger or a thermostat or a heat pump, that I won't get the support I need to operate it or to solve technology problems after installation, then I might behave differently and I might not make that switch in the first place in terms of cleaner technology or behavior. So being able to tap into that value around service and personal care is important. The next area or motivation then that consumers or customers have told us is important to them is ease and convenience, if we move on. In terms of that area, customers are asking, are you meeting me where I am in the digital world, the physical world, and through a blend of the two? And are you able to deliver what I need when I need it across all of the different channels through which I'm interacting? So post-pandemic, we're seeing consumer expectations are not going to retreat to the way they were before, and consumers are seeking what we're calling everywhere commerce. So transactions don't need to start and end in the same place or on the same medium. And ease and convenience, it's of course critical when we think about asking consumers to engage in the energy transition. It needs to be easy to engage in the first place, to get information and to inform decision making. And once consumers are informed, and critically, it has to be easy and convenient to take action. And after taking that action, it has to be easy to understand the benefits to continue engaging in the right behaviours. So as we design products then and services for consumers around energy transition, we have to do so in a way that ensures ease and convenience are put at the very heart of that design. And critically, we have to think about how we can achieve that across a wide range of demographics, across urban and rural environments, and across the digital divide and so forth. So what we're seeing at Accenture through our experience and our research is that ensuring more equal work environments leads to more diverse design teams and in turn to a higher rate of innovation mindset. And that's one critical aspect that organizations can think about as they seek to create transition solutions that are going to work for all. So moving to our fourth area then, we know that there's a rise in conscious around sustainability. We see this every single time we turn on the TV or we flick through a newspaper at the moment. So in terms of this research, what we're seeing is that consumers are asking, what about the environment? And what about societal and corporate responsibility? Can you help me make sustainable choices? Can you help me support my local community? So our focus groups confirm that consumers increasingly want to know what goes into a product, how it's produced, how far it's being transported. And bringing this information to bear in a purchase decision helps them to support sustainability and care for their communities, which consumers have told us is really, really important to them. So 76% of the reimagined then are attracted to doing business with brands and source services and materials in highly ethical ways versus 52% of those traditional consumers. And we found that 65% of the reimagined are attracted to doing business with brands and that are environmentally friendly and produce credible green credentials for the products and services that they produce. So as we think about energy transition again and engaging consumers, it's really important that consumers can get the right information that allows them to understand the overall impact of the choices they're making in terms of how sustainable they are and the benefit that they yield for them and for their community. So for instance, which solar panels have the lowest overall emissions or environmental footprint in their product fabrication and origin, or which mode of transport would be the lowest emissions to get me to my destination? You know, should I take the train? Should I take the bus and so forth? So moving on to our last area then, on the next slide, in terms of trust and reputation, consumers are asking us, can I trust you to do the right thing for me and not just in your business? Can I trust you to do what you say you're going to do and to stand for the things that you say you stand for as an organization? So to reimagined, they want companies to stand for something during the pandemic. They're clear about how they want them to contribute to society and to treat their employees well. So consumers want to avoid that residual guilt about a purchase and about any purchase. And accordingly, they're looking for signs that the company they're buying from has that integrity and is aligned to their own values and their new priorities. So in most of the industries, we saw that a majority of the reimagined said that they'd actually switch providers or companies if they didn't take visible action to have a positive societal impact. And again, this is a value that can be directly related back to how we influence positive consumer behaviours around energy transition. So consumers and communities have to absolutely trust in the partners and the organisations seeking to work with them in order to engage in a meaningful way. And they must truly believe that the partners are invested in them and in doing the right thing, and that critically they have a track record of doing that as an organisation. So local businesses and enterprises, in my view, can play a really key role in that regard, along with long-standing and trusted organisations across the country. So in closing then, and moving to the next slide, as we think about engaging customers and citizens in the energy transition, we really must reimagine their needs through the lens of experience. And I think there's a real opportunity to tap into the values that consumers have told us here are important to them as they make decisions around purchasing and engaging with products, with services, and with organisations. And in particular, I think ease and convenience is really key. It has to be easy to understand what to do, to take that action, and to understand the impact of the action. And critically, not just for the consumer themselves, but for their community and wider society. The other value that we're seeing is increasingly important is trust and reputation. And customers are really, valuing that in a new way at the time when so many of our perceived norms and our deeply held beliefs have been eroded. And I think that's a space where local business and trusted incumbents can really come together and work very well to innovate and really engage customers and communities. Finally, as we think about trust, the role of the ambassadors in the Dingle project, it's a really super initiative that we can really harness to create community-led momentum across our society, and ultimately to create new opportunities in our towns and in our villages as we deliver on our 2030 goals and beyond. So thank you for listening, and I'll hand you back to Kevin.
Thank you, Catherine, for providing Accenture's thoughts and insights from what really is really interesting consumer research, really very interesting, and I think some alignment with the experience on the ground in Dingle with the community there, and especially in terms of trust and ease of use of technology. Just by the way, unfortunately, Catherine will not be able to stay for the Q&A at the end of the event, but if there are any particular questions or people would like further information on Accenture's research, we will forward on these requests to her. So now I'm delighted to welcome our final speaker today, Ruth Buggy, who is the Sustainable Energy Community Programme Manager with SEAI, Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland. Ruth joined SEAI in 2005 and has managed a number of national grant programmes, including the SEAI Energy Poverty Programme, the Better Energy Home Scheme, and the Area-Based Programme. Ruth is responsible for the development and deployment of the Sustainable Energy Communities Programme to support the development of a community approach to energy and to stimulate a national move towards sustainable energy practice through demonstration in exemplar communities. More recently, this role has extended to include the energy in education and youth engagement programme areas. Ruth holds a degree in building services and a master's in energy management from Dublin Institute of Technology. Today, Ruth will provide an overview of the supports available to individuals and communities to support this transformation in terms of the take-up in low-carbon technologies. Welcome, Ruth, and over to you.
Thank you very much indeed, Kevin. I'm delighted to be here, and I thank you and your colleagues for the invitation. Just looking at, for my slides to come up. That's great. Thanks very much indeed. So today I'm hopefully going to show a number of supports we have that can help people all across Ireland replicate the successes of what was seen in Dingle. So I'm going to give an overview of how we support individuals and businesses on their energy transformation. So in terms of why we're doing this, it's about creating a cleaner energy future, and underpinned by the Climate Action Plan and the Programme for Government, we've set out significantly to reduce Ireland's greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. So in there's a target to move 500,000 existing homes to get to a considerably low carbon standard of a B2 building energy rating. It was already mentioned by Fergal around the 600,000 heat pump installations, of which 2/3 will be installed in existing homes. So that's a significant retrofit target. 50% of homes in Ireland have a building energy rating of D or lower currently, so they do require significant energy upgrades. To date, SEI has supported over 450,000 homes with their home energy upgrade journey across a number of the programmes that I have been involved in. So then looking at what's available if you want to upgrade your home. So this is really when we go out to engage communities and citizens, this is the real first step of how can people take that step themselves. So how can you upgrade your home to be more energy efficient and discover a new world of comfort? So you look at the benefits of a home energy upgrade, and very much like Catherine's work earlier on in her presentation, it is fascinating to understand the motivations of how we engage people in this transition and what they want out of it and why they take action. So really the majority of people come to us typically around energy savings. That's been the primary motivation to date. But when they've had the experience of the energy upgrade, really the experience is all about comfort. So they go in for a very logical reason and they come out for quite an emotional response to that upgrade. So we talk about the comfort of a home and getting a much warmer, cozier and healthier home by upgrading the insulation and the opportunity to add renewables. And I think most of us have either grown up or have moved into homes that had cold pockets or rooms you didn't use on certain days, or if they were used, they needed a couple of hours to heat up before they were comfortable in any way. And I think working from home has forced people into those corners of the home that may not have been as comfortable in the past, and it's made people really think, how can they make their home entirely comfortable? And then looking at savings on energy bills by using less energy and adding renewables to their home. Environment is certainly a growing area of motivation for people to take action, and the opportunity to reduce emissions and the carbon footprint with an energy efficient B2 home. There's then the opportunity to add value by upgrading your home to B2 or higher. And in fact, some banks now offer cheaper mortgage rates based on the building energy rating in your home. So it can actually be another way to save money in terms of how you've been financing the mortgage. Then looking at the different ways in which we offer services. So there's kind of 3 core program areas that we have available to support people. So there's people who are qualify and receive certain social welfare payments, and we provide them a free energy upgrade. We manage the entire process. There's no upfront costs, and it's fully funded by SEAI. So that's a suite of supports that are there depending on the suitability and the qualifying benefits that the household is on. And that goes by the name of the Warmer Home Scheme. That's where I actually started out in SEAI. Then looking at the new area, which is really the one-stop shop service. So this is coming out of an EU policy to try and provide this service to all communities across Ireland. So it offers a complete home energy upgrade solution. And dare I mention the no longer available deep retrofit program that a lot of people were very interested in, and it certainly attracted an awful lot more applications than were expected. It's very similar in that approach, in that it takes a whole house solution and it moves people towards at least a B2 energy rating at the end. It's part funded by SEAI, and it's, as I said, it's based on the percentage of eligible costs. And then finally, we have the individual energy upgrades. So we love to see people acting collectively. It's great to get that momentum. It's great to have the support of a community ambassador, but ultimately some people either need to or want to act alone, or they're happy to do individual measures on a slower pace than maybe what's happening in their own community. So this is the grant program that's been around since 2009 under the banner of the Better Energy Home Scheme. So it's a selective of individual grants, part funded by SEAI based on a fixed rate per technology, and the homeowner manages it themselves. So the grants range from €400 to €6,000, and it includes things like attic and cavity wall and heat pumps and solar PV and solar thermal. So then just moving on in terms of under each of those, the options are there depending on the household and what they're interested in. So in conversation with Fergal ahead of this presentation, I wanted to have a look at Dingle to see, did we see an uptick in grant applications more generally from the community when there was so much activity in Dingle? There wasn't anything specific that could be identified as an uplift. There are a couple of areas within Dingle that are, or the Dingle Peninsula, that are coming up very high in terms of an average building energy rating. So the map there on the left actually shows you the small area zones and what the average BER is in each of those zones. So you can see there's a lovely green section there, and just off to the left of the town of Dingle, and that is actually, there's 12 homes within that data set out of 88 total. So I suspect that could be a newer build group of homes that were built to a higher standard rather than a substantial change in actual energy use. So in terms of grant application, all of Kerry into the Better Energy Home Scheme have applied for and paid for 3,269 homes. Dingle have applied for 106 of those. In terms of solar PV, we saw 303 across all of Kerry, and Dingle took in 8 solar PV grants. And then for warmer homes, between 2015 and 2021, we would have seen almost 1,600 homes upgraded under that scheme, and Dingle had 19. So it's just to get a sense of what's there. The average across the entire peninsula is about a C based on area, so it's slightly above the national average, but there are still some pockets there that would have a lower than average building energy rating. So there's still a lot of opportunity for work in that area. So then looking at community energy, so this is my current program area of work, and we look really here around how we can support communities in terms of supporting them to learn, plan and do. In Learn, it's about being part of the Sustainable Energy Communities Network. We currently have 608 communities in that network all across Ireland, and they're joining every week, and it's open collaborative sharing, and luckily for us, Dingle 2030 is part of that network as well. So it provides support to communities and gives them mentors to help them along the journey. And the next stage for them then is really to look at doing an energy master plan for the community. And again, Dingle has done this. And with Marai support, they actually went well beyond that level and did a much more comprehensive piece of research. We provide 100% funding to the energy master plan to get a baseline of energy use, just to really try and understand what those opportunities are for the community and which projects will return the best investment and which ones can be done first. And then we support them into the do stage. So this year, SEI awarded €57 million in community grants. So this is a capital grant program that's available each year, and community role can vary from participation to project leadership depending on their skills and their appetite for involvement. And about a quarter of our communities move into this stage, which is great. Then looking at, just to give you a flavour of what some of our communities might look like and how they participated in the grant programme. So the Fair Play Cafe in Ringsend in Dublin was working towards becoming a zero carbon building and a hub for sustainability in the community through their Fair Play Cafe, which is a multi-use building used by a large number of the communities. They completed their energy master plan and they got a roadmap from that for energy efficiency projects for the wider community. They did an upgrade of their lighting. They installed solar PV and did some thermal upgrade as well. And they're saving about €1,300 per annum, which is a significant portion of their energy costs to run a community volunteer building. And those savings will accrue every year, and hopefully some of those savings can be repurposed into doing more retrofits in the future. And then we look at Batterstown Energy Community out in Meath. Again, they had great support from the local authority. They did their energy master plan, and then they worked with the Home Energy Savings Kit to engage the community about awareness of energy in the home. And they did really good community collaboration and connectivity, and they're looking how they can next go into the do stage within the grant programme. In terms of that large grant programme that we have, it's there to assist energy efficiency community projects through capital funding, partnership and technical support. It's a community orientated with a cross-sectional approach. So you must show you can sustainably finance the proposed project. It's encouraging smaller projects from 50K, but will accept projects up to 1.5 million. And that's in grant support. So we're typically providing funding of around a third of the total project costs, depending on what's in there, which means the programme is stimulating investment of around €150 million and works each year in this space. So the grant values range from 35% for commercial partners to 80% for fuel poor homes. So in 2020, we delivered 25 projects and upgraded 656 residential buildings to a minimum of a B2, along with 240 non-residential buildings. So it's a very impactful programme. We also work under the support to the community RES, so the Renewable Electricity Support Scheme, and the government has put in a dedicated community strand for communities who want to generate renewable electricity at scale. We're here to help support, navigate the journey for communities with financial support, information toolkit, and in there's 4 toolkits already available around grid and planning and wind and solar. So for communities to understand what the journey might involve, and my colleagues and I can help in that, and we've 3 more being commissioned as we speak. So then sustainable transport. So all those lovely EVs that Dingle got, how can the rest of you get access to those as well? So the electric vehicle grant is there for battery electric vehicles, new plug-in electric vehicles until the end of 2021. And then it's for private purchase and demonstration vehicles and commercial vans in the category of N1. The grant depends on the vehicle, so it's between 2,500 to 5,000, and the dealer will apply. So quite often the quoted price that people see is actually net of the grant. So you just have to be careful, because sometimes people double discount the grant. They see the forecourt price and they take 5,000 off it, but the dealer has already assumed you've got it. So just to watch out for that when you're in the process of looking around. Then looking at what other incentives are there to support the EV driver. So there's up to 5,000 on the vehicle registration and tax relief on electric vehicles until the end of 2023. So for anyone who has a company car, it's definitely worth a look into. There's 0% benefit in kind on EVs up to the 50,000 of the list price. And then for taxis, it's up to €25,000. There's a taxi purchase grant from the National Transport Authority. There's a discount on tolls. So it's typically half price for all the tolls around Ireland for an EV if you register with your tag provider and let them know. And then it doesn't have the Port Tunnel at peak times, I know that much, but it does bring it down to 150 off peak, so it's really worth having it. There's a cost comparison calculator on our website there for a link just to go in and see how much you can save on a monthly basis and how that might compare with the financing of the uplift you might need to get an electric car. It's well worth having a look at as well. Then just looking at the EV infrastructure support. So there's a home charger grant there of €600 per home for homes that have off-street parking. I know homes that don't have car parking, it is still a bit of a struggle. There's support going in for apartments to put in charging infrastructure in shared car parks. So that's available between 50 and 80% of the additional infrastructure costs. There's a public charger program available to local authorities to look at putting in chargers in on-street residential locations. And then there's a new program to come out next year around destination chargers. So for the likes of other spaces like gyms and GA clubs and all that sort of stuff, where they could provide destination chargers to people who are going to be there for some time. Then looking at the final section, which is business and energy. So our programs across the business sector work through 5 steps to energy efficiency. So in the first step, we try to get business users to understand their energy use. And we have an SCI Energy Academy available, and it has a whole host of free training courses to guide you through understanding your energy use, regardless of the size of your buildings. There's lots of different ones there for different industries and for different business types. And then you can work to create an energy action plan through our energy management training that's available as well. For SMEs that have an energy spend of over €10,000 a year, they can access a free €2,000 energy audit voucher from SCAI. So it's well worth going in and having a look to really understand your energy use, which is very much like what Dingle did with their energy master plan, and then look at the opportunities to upgrade. Then in terms of the business taking a decision to invest in energy efficiency upgrades and renewables, we have grants for heat pumps, biomass, under our Exceed programme for new build or significant renovation is there. And then obviously the accelerated capital allowance supports, they're there for businesses. And then always looking to monitor, track and report energy use on an annual basis. So it's a combination of financial supports, training, network opportunities and expert advice. And that, I believe, is me. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Ruth, for sharing so much information on the grants and supports available with all our attendees today, and just going through some of those areas myself in terms of looking at upgrading my own house at the moment. I must say the website is a really fantastic source of information for all the grants that are available. So after hearing from today's speakers, you probably have lots of questions that you want to ask. So just before we kick off our Q&A session, just to remind everyone, if you do have any questions for our speakers today, please post them in the chat box through Hopin there. So I'm just take some of the initial questions. So firstly, just following your presentation there, Ruth, can people start on their energy transition in a piecemeal fashion, doing it bit by bit, or does it need to be done in large chunks like a deep retrofit? I think you highlighted one of the schemes there, which is chunk by chunk. So and from that, what are the best things to really start with from your experience?
Absolutely. And some technologies suit a piecemeal approach and some need to be done in combination with others. What we say is to really try in the first way, and exactly the same with communities and the same with businesses, is to really look at understanding where your own energy use is. So taking a look at your energy bills, about 80% of our energy use in a home is down to the heating. So looking at that and seeing what opportunities there are. So the guiding principles are take a fabric first approach. So really look to insulate the home in the first instance and reduce the demand for heating. Things like attic insulation are perfect to do. That's really where you'd be starting. If you were looking at grants, that would be the first measure. If you happen to have a cavity wall suitable for cavity wall insulation, again, a very popular insulation measure to do. But it's understanding your energy use. Simple things like even just switching your electricity provider and your gas provider can be really helpful in trying to budget for making those bigger investments later on. So there's ways that you can pay, I suppose, make savings now that help you reinvest to do the next measure and the next measure. Building insulation first, then considering your whatever kind of heating system you may have, and then to consider what renewables may suit your home. So that's really it. There's some really good calculators out there at looking at your building energy rating, and the new building energy rating model actually has a very good home information report that can help guide you through the different steps and to see which measures best suit your home.
That's really fantastic advice. Thank you very much, Ruth. Next question I'll just take is, looking forward to hearing what anonymized data can be made available for further research. To Fergal, what do you think you will be able to give us, when do you think you will be able to give us a high level of metadata view on the research that's been carried out?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So we haven't really started getting into the mechanics of this at the moment. We're looking at the infrastructure necessary, first of all, to make the data available. But there's lots and lots of data that we've been collecting over the course of the project. So we have data with regard to the consumption profile of the Dingle ambassadors. So we have that sort of energy usage data since the start of 2019. But we have a lot more data now that we're gathering associated with the technology platform that we've put in place to help optimize all the different devices in the home and to use that system to see how those devices can be controlled to offer flexibility to the network operator. So there's an awful lot of data associated with the specific operation of the different devices. For example, the heat pump, how that operates. There's an awful lot of parameters associated with the heat pump to do it, the temperature in the home and different loadings and all that. So we've lots and lots of data that are on a device-specific basis, as well as more system-wide information across the, if you want to call it, the platform of the home itself. So we will be putting all that information together, and not so much just providing access to the data, but as the person that asked the question suggested there, essentially a map to say this is what this data means and where it can be accessed. So it's probably, there's a fair bit of work ahead to actually get all that done. So we'd expect that by the end of Q1 next year, we'll have information that we'll be able to share with people in that regard.
That's fantastic, Fergal. Thanks very much. I'm sure there's a lot of interested parties who will be looking to look at researching some of that data themselves as well. So on to our next question from Aoife Davis. Where has the retrofitting of businesses taken place in Dingle itself, Fergal?
Yeah, so one of our Dingle ambassadors was a lady who owned a bar and restaurant. So we worked with her to retrofit the bar and restaurant on the peninsula. So yeah, we can provide further information on that, or if you search the Dingle 2030 website, you'll be able to easily identify who the ambassador is, and potentially even visit her premises to see how the retrofit has worked out and learn about that experience. There's also information. She was also participating in the Dingle Adapts Energy series, so you get to hear her views on the whole works carried out at our premises if you look at some of the videos on that. So there's lots of information already available in terms of the experience that you had in that regard.
That's great. And really, in terms of our ambassadors, it is their experiences and shared learnings that is a real benefit and have an output from our project. So another question, I suppose, for yourself, Fergal, there from Colin Rochford. You mentioned how some technologies in the home could be scheduled on and off to support the local network. Apart from EVs, what other technologies were trialed to provide such a support?
Yeah, I suppose, and for those who can listen into tomorrow's webinars, Kieran Geeney will give a very good oversight of the work that was done in terms of our flexibility trials. And one of the things that we noticed that, if you want, I wouldn't call them discretionary loads, but the large electricity loads that we can control relatively easily will be the EV charging load, and also the control of the heat pump, particularly around provision of water heating. So we've been looking to see whether we can schedule those loads to off-peak times. So certainly get the loads away from the peak times of the day, whether it's the morning peak or the evening peak, and move them towards night time to provide the same service and comforts and outcomes that the homeowner wants, but to do it at an off-peak time. So we've successfully achieved that, and Kieran will be able to talk in much more detail about that tomorrow and show exactly how we do it and provide demonstrations of how some of this has impacted on the local electricity network. So fascinating stuff tomorrow if anybody can actually attend that session.
Thanks very much, Fergal. Just a broader question, I suppose, based on the research carried out in Dingle and I suppose in other communities as well, Ruth, what are the biggest challenges to the ordinary citizen in transitioning towards low carbon?
Sure. So there is the structure in which we work on is really around working with the willing and working with the volunteers that are willing to set up an SEC in their area. So it can be difficult for that structure to be maintained over a long period of time. But I think when the quick wins come in and there's some good projects that succeed, it can be fantastic. There are challenges around co-financing. Certainly administrative burdens and accessing grants can be very difficult for some communities, but working with other professionals in the field can make it that bit easier to do. Communities are hugely motivated, and the ambition that we see when we meet communities is phenomenal. And sometimes it feels terrible to kind of say, can we talk about this kind of project? Because this is very achievable this year, and that kind of project might work in a bit more time. So the Energy Master Plan really helps kind of bring together all of the ideas that the community can look at, and then gives I suppose, that kind of a journey plan over when they could go after those types of projects and see what supports are there. But there are systems and processes in place that are emerging to help communities, but a lot of the grants aren't really designed necessarily for communities and their activity. And I think with yourselves and the policy that's coming out and the recent climate action plan, we're seeing a lot more focus on the power of communities working together and what they can do when they collaborate, and really what they can achieve is huge.
Thanks very much. And Fergal, would you like to add anything to that from Dingle's perspective?
I suppose what we've kind of come to understand based on the people that we've been working with down in Dingle is that there were three kind of major challenge areas that seem to be emerging. One is obviously access to trusted information. So rather than somebody just coming along and trying to sell you something, can you really believe what they're actually saying? And it was great to hear Catherine talk earlier on about how trust is kind of a key thing and a motivator to help you make a decision, or a key factor in that whole decision process. So trusted information, getting access to that is really, really important. And it's great, Ruth, to see that the SEAI is doing a lot more to essentially be a one-stop shop where somebody can go and find out what's actually best for them. But actually understanding it at the local level is really important as well, because you can read all the materials, you can hear what the experts say, but if you can talk to somebody locally who has a similar setup and similar lifestyle than you have, and you can see what they've actually done and hear from them about what their real experience, that whole lived experience is, that's really, really important. A second area where there's a bit of a challenge is around just the capacity and the capability to implement the necessary changes. Now, we're hearing a lot nationally about skill shortage and that whole space. So somebody might be really motivated to do it. They might know exactly what they want to do. They may even have the finance to do it, but have they actually, are the skills there to actually make it happen for you? Can you actually call up a contractor and know that they're going to do a job and do exactly what you really want for them? And like there's been a great success on the Dingle Peninsula. There was a local electrical company that had been in operation, and based on both the Dingle project itself and a forerunner to that, another project which existed called StoreNet, these guys have transformed their business and they're now fully focused on low carbon technology delivery and rollout, and they're growing their business across the Dingle Peninsula and across Kerry and Munster as a whole. So businesses can be established at a local level, and the demand is there. If people are trusted, as these guys are in Dingle, business can be established, but there is a bit of a skill shortage and a capability shortage that exists nationally across the sector. And the third area, as Ruth said, is just the whole challenge around finance. Have people got the money? Can they access grants? Is there finance available that will make this thing work for them and give them the payback that they need over time? So kind of three big challenge areas we've seen.
Thank you very much for that. Just on a broader context, SEI, Ruth, do great work within SCCs for communities, really focusing on empowering them to take ownership of sustainability, and brings them to a point where they have their energy master plan and recommendations. In terms of next steps, is there any challenges or gaps in bringing recommendations to life? And what are those reasons around that? And is there any challenges around the complexity of some of the projects potentially as well?
Most certainly. I suppose it comes out in terms of what kind of role does the community want to participate in. So ultimately getting the job done is the ultimate goal. But some communities want to lead that project, and then they have to try and go through that complex grant application process they have. We're in the process of developing a more community friendly type of grant program that can help as a stepping stone to guide the community to the next level, and then to see which grants are available. So the full suite of grants that I laid out in my presentation earlier on are all available to everyone in Ireland. The challenge is who's going to be the project coordinator for the community and who's going to pay for that project coordinator. And that's one of the key steps that we have to look at, how we can put that resource in place in communities. And very much like Fergal said, it is difficult getting skills. I don't know anyone who's tried to get a plumber in the last while that's been successful in a short amount of time. So it can be very challenging, but building up trusted networks, the like of the local business having the knowledge, and I suppose diversifying what they can offer into the renewable space is really brilliant. And nothing works as well as seeing something being demonstrated. So giving communities through the network the opportunity to contact another community that has done a similar project is really, really helpful. But I think having the likes of the National Retrofit Programme and the National Development Plan setting out pathways to 2025 and 2030 is putting much more stability into that sector and allows the grant programmes to roll out. Currently, some of our grant programmes only operate for part of the year. And that's not good. If your energy master plan comes to an end in May and you have to wait 11 months before you can make a grant application, you could lose a lot of momentum in that time. So it's about improving those kind of experiences for communities and supporting them more in accessing the grants and being able to make those projects work locally.
Thank you very much. I suppose some real challenges, but also some real opportunities, I think, for Ireland and local areas as a whole and businesses as a whole to really step up to that challenge. We have another question here just in relation to BER certification. A person, say, for example, insulated inside in their house floors and walls with, say, 3 inches of insulation board a few years ago, but a BER engineer said they couldn't take this into account as they don't have any receipts. And there's probably a shared experience potentially where someone has done local work themselves and not taken advantage of any grants, etc. And is there any way really to resolve this, Ruth, or is there any kind of things that can be done in relation to that from a BER certification standpoint?
I'm not an expert in how they do that side of things, but my understanding is if there is evidence that can either be identified or shown to prove that the measure was there, it can be reasonably acceptable. So there are multiple ways of assessing what the construction of a home is and what's been added to. Most homes that are getting retrofitted are older homes where there wouldn't have been evidence of retrofits over the years. So one, if you are doing works, it's great to take pictures and keep receipts from the material you've used. But there are, I believe, other ways of being able to determine that. So I'd be hopeful. But if that query wants to send it on to me, I'll share it with my colleague and see if there is another solution that can be advised to the BER assessor.
That's great. No, thank you very much for that. Really appreciate the advice there and support, I'm sure, from the person who asked the question. I suppose, Fergal, with the rollout of smart metering and new tariffs by electricity suppliers, is this likely to cause changes to consumer energy usage patterns and create new problems for the network operator, for example?
Yeah, and I suppose that's interesting, Kevin. So if you think of electricity suppliers they might already be offering them tariffs which might encourage energy usage at off-peak times. For example, there might be a very low off-peak time at night time, which might be there to encourage people to charge their EVs in the middle of the night or something like that. So if all customers are signed up to suppliers that have these type of tariff arrangements, it could be that you'll see things like electric vehicle loading or hot water heating happening at the off-peak time at night time, which might create essentially a new peak on the network at that time, or I wouldn't maybe not a peak, but certainly a change in the profile, something for ESB networks to actually look at and understand fully. So yeah, there could be slight subtle changes. We'll have to watch that over time as there's a greater take-up of these technologies and as other tariffs and that are offered by suppliers. Like that could be very well the case. What happens is suppliers offer tariffs that encourage, well, they could even offer packages, for example, technology and tariffs that encourage people to sign up to them. If you sign up with us, we'll offer you an EV charger and we'll provide you your EV charging at an off-peak rate. That might actually happen. There might be products like that already emerging, but that could be things then that for ESB networks to actually just be aware of across the network as a whole and in particular pockets on the network. So yeah, it's definitely something that we'll have to watch.
Thanks very much. And just for our audience, if you do have any questions, just as a reminder, just to pop them into the chat box there. And Fergal, just on Dingle itself, I suppose, what are the next steps after Dingle for ESB networks?
Yeah, so interesting. So yeah, we've a fair bit of work to do now before the project actually finishes. So the technical trials as such finish at the end of January. Then we have some closed down activities. We've to manage the handover of technologies that we've already installed in people's homes back to them to make sure that they're happy to keep them. And if they don't want to keep them, we'll deinstall them and things like that. There's a lot of work to be done then to analyze a lot of the tests and trials that were actually carried out over the last number of months and that will continue until the end of January. So a fair bit of analysis and assessment to be done so that we can really understand what it's actually telling us and the insights that are coming out from those trials. After that, we'll have a number of webinars to share further information. We'll have various reports that we'll have to produce and things like that. So a fair bit of work over time. Now, from ESB Network's point of view, the project is actually finishing at that point in time. But like we are leaving behind us, or we hope to leave behind us, essentially a platform, as I mentioned earlier. So technology that we've rolled out on the network will stay there, and that will be used at kind of an annual or an ongoing network basis. But the technologies that we've installed in the homes, they could be used for other trials if the trial participants, if those people that have them are willing to sign up and participate in other schemes. So there's lots of interest from the research performing organisations into what's going on in the peninsula. There could be other projects and trials that be kicked off. They won't be led by ESB Networks. But one thing ESB Networks is keen to do is to continue to understand what difference we've actually made by the project that we've initiated. So there's been lots of follow-on initiatives that have been kick-started by the Dingle project. We'd like to see how some of those things play out over time. For example, is there an uptick or an upturn in terms of the number of people that actually make a step along that low carbon transformation journey? So we'll be keeping tabs on what's happening on the peninsula, but from an ESB Networks perspective, it's unlikely that we'll be heavily involved in any projects in that part of the network over time. So still lots more work to do over the coming months anyway, and lots more hearing from us as well.
Thanks very much, Fergal. And I suppose from an ESB network standpoint, our National Networks Local Connections program recently launched this year, and there's a lot of areas that they're working on which will follow on from Dingle as a business as usual approach. So just one final question coming in here. Just if we just hold on just for a second, but before I do, for that question is being coming in for myself. Ruth, just on the one-stop shop, in terms of that, how is that being further developed at the moment, and what can consumers and citizens expect from that one-stop shop?
Sure. So anyone interested in getting a one-stop shop type service for the upgrade of their home should have a look at our website, and there's a list of the different organizations that have signed up to provide that service. So I believe the launch is expected early next year for the full suite of information to come out on that, but you can certainly register your interest with the suppliers that are listed there and the service providers. The likes of the On Post Green Hub and the work they've done, and they've got an excellent BEAR calculators you can go in, and actually if you've got a building energy rating done in your home, you can go in and play with different measures and see what impact it has on your building energy rating and the likes of the different types of measures and the costs of what they would be. And that way you can see, well, if I did everything, what would I get? Or if I did it incrementally, what way would it work? So have a look at our website and it's there. So it's a really end-to-end solution that removes the need for all of the paperwork and project coordination by the householder to do a significant retrofit in their home. And for those that do want to do the big upgrade in one go, it's a really great service. And it covers the full suite of measures. So it goes far beyond the measures that are available under the individual grants offer. So it would include, dare I say, windows, which creates always a stir in Ireland when you mention grant aid for windows. So it can include upgrades to glazing, to doors, to floors. So it goes far beyond, as I said, the individual grant program. So it looks at that whole envelope approach. So if you look at home grants on our website, you can see the list of one-stop shops that are currently there. So no harm dropping a line and seeing if they're available in your area, or to let them notify you when they are offering the service in the near future.
Thanks very much for that, Ruth. So I suppose just one final question or point. So a question is coming in, and do ESB networks and SEI support communities in developing microgrids, including battery management systems? Fergal, do you want to take that initially?
I suppose we have in the past. We were involved in a previous project to the Dingle project called StoreNet, which looked at essentially establishing a virtual power producer across a community that had a number of batteries. So there were 20 different customers who were provided batteries. Some of them had solar PV, and the project looked from another partner on the project's perspective about how those batteries could be used to offer services into the market at a wholesale market level. From ESB Networks' perspective, we were very interested to understand whether the batteries could be controlled in a way to offer services to the network, whether that might be in terms of improving the voltage or moving load away from the peak times in the evening. So yeah, we have worked with communities and batteries in the past, and we've had some success and learnings from it.
Thank you very much. And I suppose if there's some information on that on esbnetworks.ie in terms of the project report linked to that project also. So Look, there's no more questions that are coming in. So I think with that, I think we'll come to a close and wrap up today's event. So Ruth and Fergal, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and insights, both from your presentations and from the Q&A session. Tomorrow's webinar will focus on the work carried out as part of the EV trial and flexibility trial, and the interesting observations and insights emerging from those. If you haven't already registered, you can do so by clicking on the original registration email and navigating to the Wednesday webinar section, or going on to esbnetworks.ie website and registering directly through that. Hopefully you will all have taken away something from today's webinar. We've provided an overview of ESB Networks Dingle project, shared some insights into factors taken into consideration by consumers when considering low carbon technology purchases, and provided lots of information on the state supports available to citizens, businesses and communities to support low carbon technologies. I'd like to thank everybody who joined us today for today's webinar, and especially a very special thanks to our speakers. So thank you, Ruth, Catherine and Fergal, for excellent presentations and engagement today. So with that, hopefully we can see you tomorrow, and goodbye and stay safe.